Leveling system issues can be extremely frustrating. If you're having some issues with your leveling system and you came across this video, I'm going to go over a few simple things that it could possibly be outside of any of the components failed. These are some of the most common things that I find outside of failed components, and I find them pretty regularly, so check these before you start getting out the test light and the multimeter and get on the phone with customer service, or even worse, go pay for a diagnostic fee at the dealership. The codes that you're seeing or errors that you're seeing on your leveling system are kind of irrelevant here because they may not actually be what's wrong. It's simply what the system thinks is wrong during the leveling process. So let's get into it. Hands down, the number one issue with receiving any kind of error code on any leveling system is going to be low voltage. You may think your batteries are good, but they may not be as good as they need to be. This system demands a lot of power. And if at any point during the leveling process it detects a low voltage situation, it is going to throw error codes at you. That goes for electric and hydraulic systems. And you may be thinking, well, I don't have a code or an error stating low voltage. You're not always going to get that. If you have low voltage in the beginning of the leveling process and you only have 11.8 volts and you press auto level, then yes, it will give you a code saying low voltage. But if you're halfway through the leveling process and for just a very brief moment while lifting the left front leg or dropping that leg, it gets down below 12 volts, then it's going to tell you left front jack error. It might give you some kind of different error, but in reality, it's just because it had an error completing that process. In other words, low voltage. So you're going to want to make sure that you plug in and try it again. Make sure you give it a few minutes to give those batteries a little top up and make sure you have good voltage. Now that we've gotten the most common one out of the way, which is voltage, that is the most common thing that I find is an issue that isn't an issue. Let's get into some of the less common ones, but definitely still worth mentioning. And that next one is going to be temperature. Now where I'm at in the Midwest, it is a whopping 5 degrees today, and I know a lot of the country is going through an Arctic freeze. Either way, there is a lot of places where it gets really cold. And a lot of times, especially in storage, RVs are sitting in that cold weather for very long periods of time, at least several weeks. So the first time you go to get into the thing, either bring your leveling system up or bring it down. You may get some error codes, things may sound a little crunchy, and you may not complete a leveling process and you may get an error along the way. But don't be too afraid just yet. Try and retract, extend again. You may have to do this a couple times, go through that process a few times, and you'll find that the issue just kind of goes away. The reason this one's getting mentioned is because that issue does come up, and most people will try the system once, they get the error, and then they freak out and bring it straight to the dealership, and by the time it gets here, the unit gets warmed up in the shop, we go to level it, we retract it, we can't find any issues with the system. That may be what you have going on. It's probably one of the more rare ones, but still worth mentioning. Another one worth mentioning that's not super common, but I have seen it fix a lot of issues really quick, is air in the system. From time to time, air can make its way into the system, which could indicate another issue with the system. Either way, getting the air out of the system can alleviate a lot of issues. Now, when you have air in the system, you may find some other issues like jacks creeping down, jacks that don't want to stay up. You may have seen some other issues previously that were caused by the air in the system, but it can cause error codes as well. Now, getting air out of the system is pretty easy. You're simply going to go over to your controller and flip through until you see the setting called manual level. Press enter, and the jacks are currently retracted, so we'll hit retract, and we're going to retract even more. You'll hit that button and you'll hear the pump whine, and then you'll hear the tone kind of change, and that's when it's going into what I like to call kind of a recycle mode, and it's just spitting the fluid right back in. Now in that process, it's also removing any air. So I'll do that for the front and rear for about 10 seconds each, and you can go through that a couple different times. Don't sit there and hold that button forever though and just heat that pump up. Again, I may do this a few different times. And if you have a hydraulic slide room or multiple hydraulic slide rooms, you can do the same thing with that because they're tied to the same pump. You can run that room all the way in, all the way out, and hold that button for an extended period of time, around 10 seconds after each process is completed. Again, not the most common issue, but definitely an issue worth mentioning. And last, but definitely not least, is fluid level. making sure you have enough hydraulic fluid in the system. If it's a hydraulic system, electric systems, this isn't going to be your issue. Side note, fluid issues such as low fluid could be a reason why you had air in the system to begin with on that last tip we shared. Now you may get lucky and your hydraulic pump may be located in a compartment, and it also could be located underneath the coach. And you're going to want a flashlight to get along the side of the tank to see exactly where your fluid level is. And you can see this one is well above the fill. We're currently retracted on the system, so all of the fluid that's in the system is primarily going to be in this tank. Now, if you were fully extended, you're going to find that your fluid level might be way down here and it seems low, but that's because all of the fluid is in the hydraulic jacks. So checking your fluid and adding your fluid can be a pain depending on how they mounted the pump. If this pump was mounted on its other side, then this cap would be on top and it would be much easier to fill. Because again, when retracted, we're fully above that fill. If I take that cap out right now, I'm actually going to lose a bunch of fluid. So again, you'll want to check your levels while retracted, and if you find you don't have enough fluid, you may actually have to extend your jacks a little bit in order to add the proper amount of fluid. What you don't want to do is completely extend your jacks and then try and fill all the way up to this cap here if you have a pump that's mounted like this, because what may happen is you may actually add too much fluid, and then when you go to retract, it will actually overfill the reservoir, blow that cap off, and you're going to make a big mess and lose a bunch of fluid. But hopefully you got lucky and your pump is one of the ones that are mounted with the cap on top, and they're much easier to fill and maintain. Now, if you do have low fluid, or you've topped up your fluid and you find low fluid situation again, then you definitely have a problem somewhere. You have a leak, you're losing hydraulic fluid. In that situation, that's something you're going to want to trace down and fix yourself, or if you're not comfortable with that, definitely get it in for service somewhere. The last thing you want to do is run this pump dry or continue to run it with low fluid levels, because this is not a cheap part to replace. If you've gone through these few things and it still hasn't got rid of your issue, or you've tried multiple times and it still has not got rid of your issue, then yes, you may have a component that's failed, and that's an entirely different video. But these are just a few things that I run into on somewhat of a regular basis that can mimic an issue with the system that's really just more of what I would consider a hiccup. Again, with low voltage being definitely the most common one that I come across on a hiccup issue versus an actual component issue. I hope this video helped you guys, maybe saved you from a diagnostic fee with something that may not actually be wrong with your system. And if you're interested in seeing more tips, tricks, and even some tours and RVs like this one, make sure you guys press that subscribe button.